Boa tarde a todos. É uma alegria estar aqui com vocês, abrindo o segundo GreenTech América Latina. Esse evento nasceu da necessidade de despoluir e de reduzir a emissão de gases de efeito estufa. No nosso primeiro ano passado, 2019, tivemos um evento presencial, onde tiveram 200 candidatos e nós apresentamos 12 empresas selecionadas. O evento foi um sucesso. Essas empresas têm crescido bastante, crescido expressivamente, contratado novas pessoas e entregado resultados de impacto para a sociedade, para governos, para corporações, para indivíduos. A partir do sucesso do ano passado, nós estamos fazendo aqui o segundo evento, em parceria com o Green Innovation Group da Dinamarca. Nós tivemos 453 empresas na base da região inteira da América Latina. E entre hoje e sexta-feira apresentaremos 20 empresas de 9 países com soluções para despoluir ou reduzir os gases que eu comentei, que são soluções que funcionam. Então, nós estamos falando de empresas que já rodam, que entregam resultado e que têm crescido o faturamento. É uma alegria também poder dizer que a gente teve mais de 500 pessoas registradas para o evento. Isso quer dizer o quê? Quer dizer que nós já de cara vamos plantar 500 árvores com a solução que a Carbonzeu ofereceu para o evento. Então, agradeço a todos que estão presentes e que poderão participar dos painéis, ouvindo o que os debatedores estão falando, vendo as apresentações das empresas e enviando perguntas após a apresentação dessas empresas de tecnologia que nós passaremos ao público. Eu gostaria de passar a palavra para o Luiz Fernando Furlan, que está aqui conosco, ex-ministro e também atuante no tema da Amazônia. Ele faz parte do Conselho do Amazonas. E quando eu conversei com ele, ele falou, eu tenho me dedicado a esse tema, né? Então, por isso, a gente chamou ele para abrir aqui o evento. Antes disso, eu gostaria apenas de agradecer a todo mundo que está conosco, a todos os nossos patrocinadores, e dizer que eu acredito que a gente tem a oportunidade de implementar novas tecnologias de impacto que dão resultado, que vão crescer fortemente. Acredito que a América Latina tem um papel central nesse campo. Gostaria de chamar o Luiz Fernando e agradecer muito a ele pela disposição de estar conosco hoje.
Muito obrigado, Tiago. Meus cumprimentos a todos os participantes do Brasil, da América Latina e também de outros países. Só para contextualizar, eu dediquei 4 anos da minha vida ao setor público. Eu venho e continuo agora no setor privado, na produção de alimentos, principalmente, mas fui ministro de Desenvolvimento, Indústria e Comércio exterior. E percebi muito da amplitude das oportunidades nesse campo de novas tecnologias ligadas à sustentabilidade e ao meio ambiente. O Brasil, nem todos conhecem, é um dos países que tem a melhor estrutura energética no mundo, porque praticamente toda a energia consumida, energia elétrica, vem de bases sustentáveis, de diferentes origens. Além do que, nós temos os biocombustíveis, né? E também muitas iniciativas na área de biotecnologia. E somos também, junto com os outros países da Bacia Amazônica, depositários da maior reserva mundial de água potável, que é um commodity que eu acredito que nesse século XXI vai ter valor transacional. Por isso é que é necessário que se fomente iniciativas nessa área, como é o evento de hoje com a GreenTech, porque aceleradoras de negócios verdes, a valorização, de alguma maneira, da sustentabilidade, dos créditos de carbono sobre a floresta em pé. Nós temos quase 60% do território brasileiro que tem as florestas de 500 anos atrás. Isso é o único lugar do mundo. Então, espero que hoje e amanhã nós tenhamos muitas ideias que despertem o interesse e que possam capturar investimentos, gente interessada em fazer com que novas tecnologias, ideias inovadoras transformem não só a questão da sustentabilidade, da economia verde, mas também que tenham impactos sociais, principalmente nas populações que moram nas áreas de preservação ambiental. Nós temos uma grande quantidade de moradores ribeirinhos na bacia amazônica. Eu, durante 8 anos, fui presidente da Fundação Amazonas Sustentável e vivenciei as dificuldades. A destruição, em geral, do meio ambiente tem fundamento econômico. Não é? Poucas pessoas destroem por destruir. Destroem porque gera algum tipo de bem com valor econômico. Então, à medida que tecnologias novas, empresas novas, iniciativas venham a substituir a destruição, a própria necessidade de reciclagem. Eu agora participo de uma empresa que recolhe, produz pneus de caminhões e tratores e recolhe a mesma quantidade para reciclagem. Eu nem tinha conhecimento disso, e é reutilizado na indústria cimenteira, por exemplo, com tecnologias que foram desenvolvidas. Espero que todos nós, ao longo desse encontro, saiamos com mais aprendizados do que trouxemos. Cada um de nós vai contribuir, vai falar, vai expor, mas, ao final, principalmente, vai ouvir. E dessa conjunção de fatores, nós sairemos com uma informação melhor e, possivelmente, com ideias que possam ser implantadas. Tive muito prazer de participar dessa abertura.
Agradeço ao Luiz por estar aqui conosco e pelo depoimento e transmitir um pouco da experiência dele. Eu fiquei muito feliz quando conversei com ele, de ouvir que ele está trabalhando com o assunto. Então, pensar que as melhores cabeças do país estão envolvidas no tema, né? E acho que um pouco da questão das cabeças e a questão de investimento é o que faz a diferença. Eu quero passar a palavra para o Frederik, da Dinamarca. O Frederik vai falar um pouquinho da visão deles, e ele tem uma parceria com o GreenTech América Latina, e eles trabalham no assunto há 6, 7 anos lá na Dinamarca, de uma forma bastante destacada. Eles têm aceleradoras não só lá, quanto na Índia, e tem várias experiências em outros países. Frederik, por favor.
Perfect. Thank you, Tiago, and thank you, Luiz, Fernando. Such a great pleasure to actually share a stage with you, even though it looks like I'm in space. It's just a made-up thing because I'm actually in my own bedroom. It's quite late here in Denmark. But I'm going to tell you about the green transition and why it matters. So I'm just going to see if I can get to share my screen. Okay, here we go, cool. I'm just going to ask you to change the slides when I need that. Okay, I'm going to tell you about the optimistic case for the green transition and how we're going to get there. So if you can do the next slide. Thank you. So as you know, cool guys don't look back at explosions. So first of all, I'm going to walk you through where we're going and why that matters. And then after that, I'm going to share with you the optimistic case for the green future and how we get there. So if you can do the next slide, please. So global temperatures right now are towards a global temperature rise of 2 degrees Celsius. That's a really bad place for us to be in. If we do reach a global temperature rise of 2 degrees Celsius, a lot of the shellfish that are right now cleaning our waters are going to be unable to actually develop their shells. And that's a huge issue for us, since these animals are actually helping us to cleanse the water. Next slide, please. Another consequence is that we will double the global water deficit. This is a huge problem. This means that a lot of countries and rural areas that are hugely dependent on scarce water reserves are going to be unable to develop their lands. They're going to be unable to actually provide drinking water for their populations. But one thing that is impressing me even more, and that is also a very relevant issue for the country of Brazil and the region of the Amazons, if you do the next slide, is that in the past 50 years, we've killed 67% of all living species. This is what has been called a mass extinction, and that's a huge problem. This loss of biodiversity that we're seeing is only going to get worse if we see a global temperature rise. But enough of all of the doomsday prophecies. If you can do the next slide, please. I could go on, but let's go to our happy place. And who's better to take us there than the Spice Girl herself, Emma Bunton. So Baby Spice, let's go to the happy place. Next slide, please. And who the fuck am I to put you in your happy place? Well, for starters, if you do the next slide, I'm the CEO of the Green Innovation Group, and we're working with actors such as the Green Innovation, the Danish Growth Foundation, as you see in the middle, Vækstfonden. They have recently done a 3 billion euro foundation just to invest in the green transition. We've been helping them develop the strategy for how to actually invest in the green transition in a meaningful way that is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So you compare your financial framework with how the investment is actually also going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Then we're working with Novo Nordisk, the sixth biggest pharmaceutical company in the world. They're also the world's largest producer of insulin, and loads of other stakeholders. So I've been doing this for many years, and basically that's my mandate to tell you why the green transition matters and why there's a great business opportunity here. This is what we do. We make green business good business for the biggest actors around. Next slide, please. So we work with everything from edible insects, next, to renewable energy, as you will see here, or robotics in the next slide. And one of the things I enjoy the most is the cooling technology. Cooling technology is one of the areas where we have the biggest potential to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, because right now we're doing cooling quite inefficiently. And in warm cities, such as the one Tiago is in, you spend a lot of your energy on air conditioning because it's so warm outside and you want it to be cool inside. Well, frankly, the interesting thing is that the production of cooling that you use inside the buildings is producing heat outside, creating an environmental phenomenon we call heat islands, meaning that the demand for cooling will also rise with the degree that you're actually cooling, because the product of cooling is excess heat, thus making the cities incredibly hot, so hot that actually people are starting to die from it now. So cooling technology is a huge potential that we don't talk about so much. Right now, we don't have a lot of great ways of cooling. So it's emitting a lot of greenhouse gases whenever we do cooling. We're also very inefficient. So we cool buildings that are not supposed to be cooled. We're cooling food storage facilities that don't hold as much food as they potentially could. Next slide. Then, of course, we work a lot with recycling and waste technologies. And the next slide, please. And we work in a host of different countries. Everyone marked in orange here is where we've made our presence in green innovation groups. We've hosted conferences in more than 12 countries. This is the second time we do something in Brazil together with Tiago and his excellent team. We're also working in India, we've been working in China, and we're working in most of the European region. If you do the next slide, please. This is a graph that we can all recognize from the recent COVID-19 situation, but essentially, this is what we should actually be looking like. You know, we should be looking at. We should be looking at what are the consequences of business as usual compared to the capacity on planet Earth, with sustainability as a priority. And that's not what we're doing. We're consuming everything that's produced on planet Earth by the month of May every year. So we have what we call the Global Overshoot Day. And if we all lived like we do here in Denmark, we would actually overshoot already in March. So there's reason to change our ways. There's reasons to be smarter about it. If you do the next slide, please. However, this is the one graph that actually matters. So what you're seeing here is a graph that is showing how much greenhouse gas is in the atmosphere. And you see the current trajectory that we're on is going up quite steep. We need to reach the moment in time where we have drawdown. And that's what you see with the gray dot. The moment of drawdown is the moment where we're pulling out more greenhouse gases from the atmosphere than we're pumping into it. When we reach that point, we can actually start controlling the atmosphere so it doesn't overheat and it doesn't cool down and go out of control. This is the single most important mission in the history of mankind. That is reaching the point of drawdown. Next slide, please. Luckily, the case is there. We're seeing that the price for electricity is only going one way, and that's down. This is the development of wind energy in kilowatt hours in US dollars. And as you can see, it's going steeply down. On the other hand, if you take the next slide, we're also seeing that the interest in plant-based diets, in either vegetarian or vegan diets, is also on a steady rise. And if you're familiar with the trend of the hockey stick, this looks a lot like the bottom part of a hockey stick curve, right? On top of that, we're also getting better at making plant protein and plant-based alternatives to animal protein. Next slide, please. On top of that, legislators are really changing the game. So we're seeing that 260 billion euro is being pumped into the new Green Deal in the European Union every single year. That means that we will see more renewable. It means that we will see more green technologies. We'll see more transitional technologies. And we'll see new ways of providing transparency for how we can actually make this green transition happen. Because we're investing quite heavily in this area. And other countries and other regions are going to follow suit very, very soon, because we can also see that this is an amazing business case. The companies that are succeeding in Europe right now are all green companies, and they're having amazing growth because they're the ones that started doing the smart thing first. So we all need to get on this train. If you do the next slide, please. I'm going to share here towards the end some amazing technologies with you that a bunch of you will probably not know are so far developed they're actually out in our societies by now. So what you're seeing here is the Holo car. It's an autonomous driver-free vehicle. It's fully electrical, and it's a passenger transport. So it's driving around in 5 cities in Europe. And right now they're transporting passengers on steady routes. So you can actually go into a bus that doesn't have a driver, that is fully electrical today. Next slide, please. This right here is a public building that is being used as a battery. So basically IBM developed this platform that can turn on and off the heat of public buildings in order to store energy. When we have excess renewable energy in Denmark, we have a lot of wind energy. So when we have too much wind energy, we can use that electricity to heat up buildings. So the buildings keep the heat, and you don't need to turn on the heat later on when humans need to inhabit them and somehow make it pleasurable to be there. So this is a way to take the entire building mass of a country and turn it into one giant battery. On top of that, every time we can do this, we don't have to build new conversions. So we don't need to build hydrogen plants. We don't need to build alternative batteries. So thanks a lot, IBM, for developing this. If you do the next slide, please. So these rocks are made by an American company that found a way to recycle plastic waste, which is typically quite complex to deal with. These are plastic rocks that use less water. They pollute less than normal rocks do when you mine them from a quarry. And they're also lighter, so you can mix it into cement for concrete. Pretty amazing, much cheaper, much cleaner, and it's taking away waste from our ecosystems. Next slide, please. So what you're seeing here is something that I find quite fascinating, right? Because in Denmark, we're right now building the biggest hydrogen facility in the world. It's going to produce 1.3 gigawatts by the year 2030. And then I was thinking, okay, but what are we going to use all this hydrogen for? And I was thinking to myself, well, it's probably going to be something like hydrogen-powered flight, right? And I was like, yeah, but do we even have that? And then I went into my research and found out that actually Boeing made the first passenger flight fueled by hydrogen in 2008. So we've had this technology for a very long time. We just haven't had a really good way of producing hydrogen at a steady enough level, and also with a wide enough spread that you can actually reliably get hydrogen to fuel airplanes all over the world. So this is really, really, really exciting. And even more exciting is that quite recently, I think just this year, BMW actually released a jetpack that is electric. How amazing is that? So right now we actually have the power of flight in an electrical engine. I had never thought I would see that in my lifetime, but it's there right now, and people are actually experimenting with it. It goes something like 480 miles per hour. Next slide, please. And finally, we're also able to actually grow meat in labs. So when this technology is being rolled out, we will not have the need to pasture, we will not have the need to clear rainforest in order to grow food for cattle. This is amazing. The future is actually now. What we need is further investment so we can roll out these technologies. There's not much left but to say so long and thanks for all the fish. Next slide, please. I hope you remember a towel out there. And then if you do the next slide. I'm always quite happy to connect on LinkedIn and answer any questions that you might have. If you scan the QR code, I am ready to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and thank you, Tiago, for having me here. Cheers.
Muito obrigado, Frederik, pela participação e mostrar um pouco das novidades. Bom, a ideia do evento inteiro é de conectar e mostrar um pouco das oportunidades que existem e, nesse sentido, a Dinamarca tem feito bastante coisa interessante. Eu gostaria de agradecer novamente ao Luiz Fernando Furlan por estar aqui conosco e também ao Frederik aí pela participação inicial. E agora nós vamos chamar o primeiro painel. Eu não vou falar muito das pessoas que estão nele, que muitos de vocês conhecem muito bem, nós estamos com o tempo apertado, mas nós temos o Fábio, que vai moderar o painel, o Fábio Alperovitch. Eu passo a palavra para ele apresentar os demais participantes e iniciar o debate.